In today's recap, we're diving into the intense thriller The Informer. You're watching Flashback Recap. Let's go! Pete is working undercover for the FBI's New York City field office, infiltrating a Polish crime syndicate to gather solid evidence against its leader, the General. As the long-awaited operation begins, Pete tells his wife and daughter that they need to go on a trip. Erica, Pete's handler, briefs her team on the plan. Pete will deliver 6 pounds of fentanyl to the General, which is when they will make their move. To keep his family safe, Pete locks them in a warehouse and gives his wife the key, instructing her to leave the state if he doesn't return by 1 p.m. the next day. Pete meets Erica in a rundown bathroom where she provides him with a phone for contact, a wire to wear, and a signal asking for a smoke in case things go wrong, which would prompt Erica's team to intervene. Pete and Stasek, another operative, meet a diplomat who has the fentanyl, which they repack into a different bag before dropping the diplomat off at a hotel. Stasek decides to buy liquor for the General, his uncle, and plans to surprise him with cash instead of fentanyl, revealing that he already has a buyer lined up. Pete remains silent to protect his cover, though this deviation disrupts their entire plan. Despite this, Erica decides to continue following them. At a club, the buyer nervously admits he can only afford 3 pounds of fentanyl instead of all 6, worth $85,000. This upsets Stasek, but Pete calms him down and questions how the buyer will come up with the rest of the money in just 2 hours, showing doubt. When Stasek steps away to take a call, Pete accuses the buyer of being a cop and urges him to escape, but the buyer denies it. As tensions rise, the buyer pulls out a gun and a badge, confirming his status as an undercover cop, and Stasek shoots him. Shocked, Pete signals Erica for help by pretending to need a smoke, but Erica calls off the operation and drives away, leaving Pete to handle the aftermath alone. He ends up helping to dispose of the body. Later, at a sausage factory, Pete meets the General, who calmly states that a New York cop was killed and someone must take the fall to keep the NYPD from getting involved. Although Stasek was the one who pulled the trigger, the General manipulates the situation to make it seem like Stasek saved Pete's life, indebting Pete to him. To settle this debt, the General demands that Pete go to prison for 5 years to run the drug operation from inside. The General further pressures Pete by reminding him of his family, leaving Pete no real choice but to comply. Pete and his family are brought back home, where he contacts Erica. She informs him that she couldn't intervene without risking their 4-year operation and then ends the call. Frustrated that his wife Sophia didn't leave as instructed, Pete and Sophia quickly reconcile, and she helps him wash off the blood. The police later find the body, and Detective Grenz, who was a close friend of the deceased cop, begins investigating. He soon discovers that the murder is linked to a Polish gang and finds footage that implicates Pete in the crime. Pete meets with Erica and her boss Montgomery, who inform him that he's in deep trouble. They've been trying to cover up the situation, but haven't been successful. Pete wants out, but they insist on sticking to the General's plan, which involves locking Pete up. If Pete can gather enough evidence about the fentanyl distribution network while in state prison, they promise he'll be set free. If he refuses, however, they'll expose him as an undercover agent and pin him for the murder of an undercover police officer, leaving him with little choice. Back home, Pete stores the recordings of his conversations with Erica in a box. The next morning, Stasek visits Pete and hands him some fentanyl to smuggle into prison. Pete breaks the news to Sophia about his new undercover mission. He spends the day with his daughter, taking notes on the prison layout. Upon their return home, they are visited by a Polish gang and the General himself, who hints at the stakes by saying he has no children because he couldn't bear to lose them, subtly warning Pete to uphold his end of the deal. Detective Grenz has been surveilling Pete's house and informs his partner that the General has left Pete's residence. The following day, Pete pretends to be an abusive husband, prompting Sophia to call the police, who then arrest Pete. Grenz watches as Pete is taken away. In prison, Pete is greeted by a corrupt guard and taken to his bunk bed, surrounded by African-American inmates. One of the prisoners bribes the guard to free up 2 bunk spots to ensure Pete's safety. During a night raid, the warden, acting on Erica's request, places Pete in a cleaning program. Pete quickly connects with the Polish gang members in prison and is given a shiv to prepare for an upcoming confrontation. Grenz visits Erica, seeking information about Pete, but she pretends not to know anything. Montgomery steps in, denying any connection to Pete. However, when Grenz presents surveillance photos of Pete and Erica taken on the day Grenz's friend was killed, he warns them that a conflict between the FBI and NYPD is brewing, and they'll be in serious trouble if linked to Pete. Following Pete's instructions, Sophia uses a drone to deliver contraband to the prison, landing it on the roof. The next morning, Pete retrieves the items during his cleaning duties. Grenz later visits Sophia at her workplace, trying to gather more information about Pete. Unsure whether Pete is the killer, Grenz is dismissed by Sophia, who tells him he can't help and to leave. Grenz leaves his card, offering help if she changes her mind. Grenz then communicates with Pete through an informant, advising him that there will come a time when his gang won't be around in the yard, and if Pete wants to survive, he should signal his willingness to talk about the cop's death. The corrupt guard takes Pete to Phelps, the leader of the African-American gang controlling the prison drug trade, who feels Pete is interfering. Phelps and his men attempt to kill Pete, but Pete reveals that he's an undercover FBI informant aiming to take down the general. Phelps spares him and agrees to assist Pete with information, on the condition that Pete manages to stay alive. Back at FBI headquarters, Montgomery orders Erica to kill Pete and shut down all operations related to the general, as Grenz is closing in on them and Pete is acting as an unofficial informant. Montgomery warns that if the NYPD discovers what really happened when the undercover cop was shot, Erica's career and possibly her life will be destroyed. He threatens that if she doesn't comply, she'll be scapegoated for trying to impress her superiors by going too far. Later that night, Pete, feeling tense, is approached by one of Phelps's men while taking a break. The man provides Pete with the names of those controlling the drug distribution network in the prison. Pete later calls Erica, revealing that he's uncovered the general's entire network, and begs her to help him get out, fearing for his life. Erica, however, refuses because Montgomery has ordered her to eliminate Pete, and she prioritizes her own safety over his. Pete then contacts Sophia, instructing her to hand over the tapes of his conversations with Erica to Grenz and to leave the state for her safety. Erica, realizing the potential fallout, approaches the general's lawyer, who informs the general that Pete is an undercover agent. Confronting Sophia, Erica confiscates the tapes, with the FBI having already intercepted her phone conversation with Pete. Feeling guilty, Erica listens to the tapes and hears herself promising to protect Sophia and Pete's daughter. In the prison, one of Phelps's men signals that Pete has been exposed. Preparing for a confrontation, Pete discovers his shiv is missing and is soon attacked by a Polish gang member. Pete manages to overpower and strangle the attacker. He then appears on the security cameras to alert the guards. When the corrupt guard arrives, Pete takes him hostage, demanding to speak with the press and his wife. He escapes to an isolated tower, knocks out the guard, and uses his military training as a former U.S. Army sniper to mark potential sniper angles from the windows. Meanwhile, Stasek confronts Pete's family, who had just been speaking with Detective Grenz. Grenz arrives shortly after and takes down one of Stasek's men, but as he makes his way upstairs, he is shot in the leg. Unable to return fire because Stasek is holding a hostage, Grenz loses his gun in the process. As Stasek prepares to finish off Grenz, Sophia manages to break free and shoots Stasek in the back, though she is injured in the process. At the prison, snipers are in position, and Montgomery arrives on the scene prepared to order Pete's death at the first opportunity. The warden is present to negotiate Pete's demands. Pete makes a call to his wife, assuring her that he plans to make it out of this situation, but Montgomery cuts off the conversation. Pete then steps out holding the guard hostage, swapping clothes with him to disguise himself from the snipers. Pete wakes the guard up and lets him take Pete hostage, using the situation to his advantage. He steps out, exposing himself to the snipers, who fire and hit a CO2 tank. Pete quickly takes cover, and the tank explodes, creating chaos. Shortly after, Erica arrives at the scene, finding the prison engulfed in flames. Montgomery tells her that the job is done. When firefighters escort Pete, disguised in the guard's uniform, to the ambulance, Pete is working undercover for the FBI's New York City field office, infiltrating a Polish crime syndicate to gather solid evidence against its leader, the General. As the long-awaited operation begins, Pete tells his wife and daughter that they need to go on a trip. Erica, Pete's handler, briefs her team on the plan. Pete will deliver 6 pounds of fentanyl to the General, which is when they will make their move. To keep his family safe, Pete locks them in a warehouse and gives his wife the key, instructing her to leave the state if he doesn't return by 1 p.m. the next day. Pete meets Erica in a rundown bathroom where she provides him with a phone for contact, a wire to wear, and a signal asking for a smoke in case things go wrong, which would prompt Erica's team to intervene. Pete exchanges a final glance with Sophia before slipping back into hiding. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video.